дојдовте да слушнете за една добра книга, а издавачот одлучи да ве прошета во Дженова на едно многу необично патување. Книжевно се разбира, а се разбира со најдобриот водич што можеше да го избере, а тоа е авторот Илја Леонард Фајфер, кој што со овој роман ве води на нешто што никогаш нема ни да помислите дека од првата страница е тоа што го читате од самиот наслов. Инаку, Илја Леонард Фајфер, како што кажа и организаторот, е многу еден од најактуелните, најпознатите европски автори во моментот, а особено во Холандија е еден од најпознатите поети, наградуван повеќе пати за неговите збирки. Исто така е и многу плоден прозаист, посебно за неговиот роман Ла Суперба ја има добиено највисоката холандска награда за проза, Либрис од 2014-та. Исто така овој роман ја има добиено и најпознатата национална награда за најубава реченица напишана на холандски јазик. И тоа е она што веднаш ќе го забележите и што ќе ги отворите страниците на романот што е пред нас. Инаку Илја Леонард Фајфер е класицист по вокација, долго време и предавал на фестивал на универзитетот во Лајден, еден од најстарите универзитети во Холандија, но ете така одлучува дека можеби таа професорска средина не му одговара толку, па одлучува да се препушти на писателската кариера и се посветува на поезија и проза и е исто така многу активен полемист и многу често сака да полемизира во однос на поезијата, на пристапот кон поезијата во Холандија и воопшто ставот кон поезијата. Тој смета дека и поетот треба да биде еден магионичар на зборот и дека многу повеќе треба да се внимава на убавиот збор, на пишувањето и на односот кон поезијата и каков тип на поезија треба да се пишува. Но да се вратиме на ова нашево патување со Ла Суперба, како што Илја одбира да го наслови овој роман според старото име на Дженова. И да не втурне во една авантура која што не е едно типично, како што дури критичарите ја оцени оваа книга како едно љубовно писмо кон градот Дженова, туку е една авантура во која самиот наратор, полуавтобиографски или напишано, се втурнува, односно се наоѓа во нешто што самиот не може ни да го предпостави. Инаку романот започнува, е воден и конципиран како писма на нараторот до неговиот издавач во Холандија, во кој што му го раскажува начинот на кој што тој навлегува и ја доживува Дженова, а тоа е едно сосема многу необично искуство, една авантура која што го втурнува во темната страна на градот, во темната страна на сето она што не може да се доживе денски и не може да се доживе во шетањето на старите и прастари, околу прастари традиционални згради и сите тие кафулења, туку тоа е една сосема друга прошетка која што го втурнува и меѓу оние по мрачните страни на доживувањето на животот и светот. Поделен е во 3 дела и почнува исто така со една необична приказна за една женска нога ампутирана што главниот лик ја наоѓа во градот и така почнува таа потрагата по најубавата жена во Дженова. Но завршува по мрачните делови од градот, завршува во гетото, завршува меѓу трансвеститите, меѓу сите оние други приказни кои што многу поавтентично можат да ја дадат, да го дадат животот за еден град. И така полека доаѓаме до тоа дека Ла Суперба, таа раскошна, допадлива девојка е всушност она што е однадвор не е таква и однатре.
Ќе продолжам јас на англиски, за да може да ме разбере авторот, бидејќи не зборувам македонски. I hope that people will understand. I'm going to speak English so that our esteemed writer tonight can understand what I'm saying and can later answer our questions, because hopefully he will be tonight the focus of our attention. Ла Суперба is a very interesting novel coined by someone who is obviously very adept at understanding and studying literature. Ilja himself is an ancient Greek scholar, and his knowledge in writing and reading is quite evident in the way in which he really seduces you into reading this novel and basically plays tricks with you throughout reading it, and when you come to the end, you're still left with a question mark regarding where the irony was lying in the novel, what is fact and what is fiction, where reality is, and what is the borderline between reality and fantasy, which is obviously one of the most important aspects of your writing, at least as far as this novel is concerned. Very briefly, for me emotionally, it was really it was a journey to read this novel, because I was constantly feeling I was feeling confused, because the narrator of the novel is called Ilja Leonard Pfeijffer. So you are automatically seduced into thinking that the writer is the narrator. But the narrator is really weird, and the things that the narrator tells you are not things that you would tell anybody else. In the beginning of the novel, we learn that Ilja Leonard Pfeijffer, the narrator, is someone coming from the Netherlands. He's an immigrant who's come to Genoa, and who suddenly runs into, and he knows the geography of this beautiful city very well, and he tends to and basically one of the most romantic things about this novel is the way in which he describes these mystical and beautiful old European streets, naming them by their Italian names, making us imagine these cobblestone narrow streets where a lot of mysteries happen. But in one of these alleys he runs into and stumbles upon, in fact, an amputated woman's leg. And then something very perverted happens to the narrator and this leg. They form a romantic relationship at the beginning of the novel. And then suddenly the amputated leg disappears in the storyline, and I was wondering whether this is, I was really questioning you as a writer all the time while I was reading the novel, and I'm really glad that you tricked me so well. I was asking people from the Netherlands if you were really a famous poet, because that's how you were presented in the novel as well. But then the novel goes into meandering forms of narration that are then relate to important Italian families in the city, that then relate to immigrants, a very interesting drunkard who mystifies his life, and a British immigrant living in the town. Of course, the quest for the most beautiful woman, girl in Genoa, and then also relates to the African immigrants that are coming to Genoa. So obviously immigration becomes a very important topic, but then, and love and sex and different forms of what you can call brutal sexuality, and sometimes even perversion are appear in the novel. And you're wondering, with all these intermezzos that happen within, whether this will come to a close, and what has happened to this amputated leg that the writer has seduced you with so well at the very beginning of the novel. And in the end, the amputated leg becomes a symbol of the transformation of the main character, Ilja, whose name is Ilja Leonard Pfeijffer, whom you constantly imagine as the writer himself. So for me, it was a thrill to meet you. And I would like to ask you, as one of my first questions, would be, why do you play this role? Why do you play this game with the readers, where you intentionally take your own identity and then you transfer it into an identity of a very complex narrator who tends to transform and in the end actually, whom we tend to love and hate at the same time? Why do you do this to yourself when you know that, knowing how the readers may or may not react?
That's a very interesting question. Thank you very much. Perhaps you will allow me, before I answer your question, to briefly emphasize that I'm very happy and very grateful to be here. And I'm very grateful to the entire Antolog team who put this book on the Macedonian market, which is a great honor for me. And it's also a very weird experience, because it never before happened in my life that a book of mine was translated into a language which I cannot read at all. And that is a very alienating experience. So it's funny that this book is full of every single word that I have written, but I cannot read it. And it's great to be here in Skopje, and I'm really thrilled that I have this opportunity to present this book to you. As you rightly say, the question about what is fact and what is fiction is quite central to the novel. Perhaps it's also quite central to about everything I write. It's a theme that interests me very much. Also because I think that the relationship between fact and fiction, fantasy and reality, is increasingly problematic. And the theme about the relationship between the two is, I think, a theme really of the modern times. And in almost everything I write, I try to study that from different angles and different points of view. In La Superba, I intentionally put a lot of fact. When you write about fact and fiction, it's also good to have some fact. So I wanted to be extremely precise about the setting, about the stage, about the city. I really frenetically checked every street name and made sure that it is absolutely correct for some reason that was very important to me. Then most of what happens in the story is more or less based on true events, but for the greater part fiction. But then, to confuse you more, I chose as a main character a person who looks very much like me, who has the same profession as me, who also, like me, came from the north to the south as some kind of a luxury immigrant with the fantasy of enjoying la dolce vita italiana. And my main character also has this very unlikely name, Ilja Leonard Pfeijffer. But of course he isn't me. And the reason why I put this, I created this puppet after my own image is, well, on a very basic level, of course, it's a literary trick. It's a way of getting the attention of the reader. People tend to be more interested in a story when you're telling a story about something that really happened to you. So I play with that trick. And then, perhaps on a slightly more profound level, Much of the novel is also about shifting identities, and this also has a lot to do with the main theme in the book, which is migration. I'm sure we will talk more about that. But many characters change identity in this book, and this main character that looks like me but isn't me is in a certain way also a symbol for this uncertain identity.
I'm very glad that for all of you who are here and you can actually see and feel Ilja and what he's like, that then you can read the novel and understand how magical the trick is, because I was a little bit, I have to be honest, I was a little bit shocked when I met you, because you tricked me. I'm a reader, I delve in literature, but this, you were very good at tricking me. I was a little bit scared because the narrator, he goes through this extreme transformation, where he's this, sometimes, he's extremely masculine, he's chauvinistic. The way in which he looks at women, he objectifies them. He has these horrific experiences with very bosomy, I should say, or large-breasted women who almost rape him.
That part is very autobiographical.
What? Okay, feminist on stage. So but then there's, this. Okay, can I tell everybody that the main character has sexual fantasies with an amputated leg, and he comes on the leg? You think of yourself, oh, this is some kind of yes.
Stop telling the book, because my excitement,
I'm not telling the book.
my
Please.
excitement is dead, totally.
No way. I'm not going to tell you the ending of the book. In 5 minutes, I'm
No, this is what she's telling now is in the beginning. So
the beginning of the book.
It's not a spoiler.
No, it's not a spoiler. It's something that should seduce you into reading this book. There's a very extravagant section in the beginning where you read these things, and then there are these scenes of brutal sexuality. But also you have these scenes where the writer is abusing his subjects, whereas the writer is actually speaking, for instance, to migrants who are telling him the stories of their lives, these awful, tragic stories about migration from Africa to Europe. But then you see the author, actually the narrator, I'm sorry, using these stories just for his own good, just because he wants to write a book. So you're thinking, and also presenting himself as a very famous and wonderful, good-looking, very tall, handsome, beautiful, scentful hair, just this gorgeous man walking the streets of Genoa who is writing a beautiful book. And then you become a little bit, you're gaining this relationship which is very dangerous with the writer, and then you meet Ilja, who knows exactly why he's doing all of these things, and he's doing them to seduce you and to trick you, which I'm very thankful for. Thank you for doing this, for giving me this experience. But to come to the topic of migration, I would ask Ilja, because he's already putting himself in the position where he's using his own name and his own physique to describe, to use for the main character of this novel and the narrator and the protagonist. So now I have the honest opportunity to ask you things about your real life and how much your life actually is connected to this novel. So for once, I know that you really did move to Genoa in 2008, and I would like you, if it's possible, to tell us the story of your migration and how come as a northerner you came to Genoa, and how maybe you are perceived in Genoa as a northern migrant.
Yes, of course, thank you. No, it's actually quite a funny story. I ended up in Genoa more or less by coincidence. It was not planned at all. It was because in the summer of 2008 I made this very strange and stupid journey. I went